Welcome to the Unheard Cries of a Mother, the podcast, where we dive into the raw, unfiltered stories of motherhood, the joys, the struggles, the sacrifices, and the triumph. Here, we amplify the voices that too often go unheard, shining the light on the incredible strength, resilience, and love of mothers around the world. I'm your host, Sabrina Ben Salmi, and I invite you to join us as we uncover stories behind the smiles, share lessons learned, and create a community that uplifts, supports, and inspires. Let's honor the unheard cries and celebrate the silent victories of motherhood together. Help me to welcome our special guest, Abena. Abena, it's an absolute joy to have you here. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here.
No worries. Very
Thank you.
excited to be here.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So we're going to jump right into the first question.
Sure.
The first question that I have for you is, can you share a pivotal moment in your motherhood journey that shaped who you are today?
Yes, I have an incredibly important part of my motherhood journey. So my ex-husband, the best way to describe him is not a very nice person. And I remember when I got married, we have to say these vows about through sickness and health. And the way that I've been brought up, part of it was not just through sickness and health, but through just sacrifice, pure sacrifice. And whilst I was with him, we didn't have a child until a lot later on. I think it was how many years? Maybe 10 years or something after we got married, because we weren't in a hurry. I remember one of my mum's friends said to her, "Oh, does she have fertility problems? We have somebody who can pray for her." And she said, "No. She's fine. She's just, she's doing other things." But, in private, my mother would say to me, "You're not getting any younger. I want a grandchild." And so, I eventually had a child. And around about the time my daughter was nearly 2, I just thought to myself, do I want my child to be like this man that I'm married to? And I said to myself, no, I don't. And if I don't want my child to be like this man, then why am I with him? And then I said to myself, do I want my daughter to live the life that this man forces us to lead, where nobody comes to the door, where no money is spent on anything. He scrimps on absolutely everything, where I cannot breathe, I'm suffocating. Is that what I want for my child? I said, no way. So I decided to divorce him because I had made that promise to him. I had got married to him, but my daughter hadn't. And she was not going to suffer the same way that I had suffered with him for 16 years. That is not what I saw a mother should do. A lot of people think, it's better to stay married to somebody because it's better to have two parents. Yes, it's better to have two parents who love each other and are functional. But if they're not, it's better to have two separate parents who are happy and fulfilled. So I divorced him, and I divorced him because of my daughter. And I'm very proud to say that, because even now, I think it was only 2 days ago, he lives in Florida now. He met this American woman over playing some game online. And then he went out to meet her once. He went out to meet her a second time. And then when he came back the second time, he said that he was going to go and live in America. His daughter was 2 at that point, and he left her to go and live in America because, in addition to being not a very nice person, he's incredibly selfish. And he had lived off of me, siphoned my joy, siphoned money from me for all those years. And he knew that he couldn't live on his own, because his parents had done the same thing. They'd allowed him to just siphon everything from him and from them. And so he had to find another person. So he found a person, and straight away, imagine meeting somebody twice and leaving your child to go and live with that person. That's the sort of person he is. So yes, he left her, and only the other day he sees her once per year in the summer, and 2 days ago he said to her by text, not phoning her, but by text, that he wasn't going to come to see her this year. That's the sort of loser he is. So if I had stayed with that man, the joy that my daughter has, the life that my daughter has had for the last 10 plus years, she wouldn't have had, because she would have been in a prison that I would have allowed her to stay in because I was with that man. No way. So yes, that was the pivotal moment.
Wow. Abena, thank you so much for sharing. I've been having very similar talks with many mums around that. And what I do love is that you shared with the listeners and viewers is the aspect of the question, our questions that we ask ourselves, those powerful questions in that, do we want our child to embody those characteristics?
Yeah.
That's a very deep question. If we be really honest with ourselves and sit with that, I can't imagine a mother that would not sit and really hold herself accountable to the reality of, if I'm honest with myself, what's the genuine answer I can respond? Is this person loving, kind, safe? Are they, are we striving together? Are we a team? Like, if we ask ourselves the right questions, it really helps us to make the next decision in a more honest way, because sometimes we do stay there, especially at 16 years seems to be quite a golden number. I've met so many women. Yeah, it's like, it's a time where you just realize that something has to shift or I need to move on. And I really want to acknowledge your strength and your courage, because it sounds easy, but it's not.
No, I think it was easy because I knew that it was for my daughter. I'm not like this anymore, but I was for most of my life, in this state where I sacrificed myself for other people, where I felt that they were more important than me. And I would be willing to do things to make other people feel good about themselves or other people feel better, and so on. And if it hadn't been for my daughter, I think if I'd had my daughter, earlier, I would have left him earlier as well. It wasn't the number of years that I was with him. It was when I had my child. That's what made the difference. Because at that point, I wouldn't do the best thing for me. I would do the best thing for somebody else. That somebody else was my daughter, the person who I loved more than anything, anybody in the whole world, more than myself. And I knew that the best thing for her was to leave him. That's why I left. I did not leave for myself. I left for her. And because at that point, I didn't care enough about myself to leave for myself. That's why I'd been in that horrific relationship for all those years, because I didn't care about myself to get out of it, because I told myself, well, I've made my bed, let me lie in it.
Thank you so much for adding that context. I think that's so important for the listeners and viewers. And I loved what you said, the love that you had for your daughter was the shifting point for you. So had she come earlier, it would have been that shift, but
Oh,
she was
definitely.
the shifting point. And I think that's so profound the way you've actually framed it, because sometimes we love other people more than we love ourselves, but also as women, we're often taught to be very selfless, and it's celebrated. The more we leave ourselves behind, the more gracious we are, the more amazing we are. And we've got to be very mindful of how we do that. But the love for your daughter was the moment that set you free. So that's really
Amen.
so the next question I have is, what's one part of your story that you feel has gone unheard or unacknowledged?
I suppose it's that, really, what I just said. People see me for who I am now. And one of the things, I as mayor, I have 3 different charities that I raise money for. And one of the charities that I raise money for is Home Start Shepway. And Home Start Shepway works with families of children from 0 to 8 and domestic abuse survivors. And they actually helped me during, the process of my divorce, because do you know what? I thought domestic abuse was somebody hitting you, beating you. You had, tears, you had big cries, you were bleeding. I thought that was domestic abuse. I had no idea that domestic abuse could be somebody who works on your head, who demoralizes you, who puts you in a space that you don't even recognize yourself anymore. You stop living, you're just existing. I didn't realize that. Somebody who, steals your money and you don't even know that they're doing it. My ex-husband told me that I wasn't good with money. So I used to give him money. We didn't even have a joint account. I used to give him money and then he would pay the bills. I didn't know what he was doing with that. One day when I think after I'd had my daughter, I did ask him, could you just tell me, you know, how much we're paying for what, blah, blah, blah. And then he gave me like a spreadsheet. And then he said, and then included in that spreadsheet was payment for his petrol. I said, why am I paying for your petrol? Why do I need to pay for your petrol in that money? Well, technically he said it wasn't what I was paying for, but it was what he thinks that I should pay for, that I should pay for his petrol to go to work. And I just thought, I don't understand that. But anyway, yeah, I gave him the same amount of money every single month. I had absolutely no idea how much anything cost all the time that we were together. No idea at all. I didn't have a credit card. I didn't even exist to the bank. I remember after we got divorced, I went to go and get a credit card and they wouldn't give me one because I had no credit history because I'd never ever got a credit card in my whole life. And so they said you had to create, you had to actually start and then, pay, get something out, pay, and then, you'll create some sort of credit history. But I had no idea what anything costs. Nothing, because I completely and 100% trusted him because I wanted to believe, and this is the most important thing, I wanted to believe that he loved me and he was taking care of me like somebody who loves you should. That's where I was at that point. So Homestart Shepway had this thing called a one-stop shop. And in that one-stop shop, they would have lawyers. They had different types of support. And if you were somebody who was being subjected to domestic abuse, you could go there and actually get some support in one place. So I became accustomed to them, or I acquainted with them when I went to the one-stop shop. And then there were some times when he would, even after we divorced, try a new tactic to try to terrorize me. And then I would have to, for example, saying that I can't take my child abroad. I need his permission for this. I need his permission for that, even though he was living in America. Or when he was just about to come back to England, and I'll be thinking, what is he going to try to do now? There was always some fear that he was going to try to take my daughter away from me because he knew how much I loved her. He knew that was the only way he could get to me now that he was out of my life. And he would always try all sorts of things. So I would speak to them sometimes and they would talk me through and tell me, I can do this and I can do that. Or he won't be able to do this, he won't be able to do that. But the worst thing that he ever did was during lockdown and you know what, I've done talks and I've had podcasts and stuff where I've spoken about domestic abuse and stuff like that, and for a really, really long time I didn't give details of what he did because I didn't want to shame him. Imagine. But I don't care. He deserves it. People need to hear the sorts of disgusting things that some of these people do. They need to hear it because when they hear it and they see that happening in their own lives, if they still have the blinkers on like I did, they can actually think, no, not me. It was lockdown and his daughter didn't want to speak to him because whenever she spoke to him, he would just talk about himself and not ask her about herself. They used to speak on Skype and he contacted her a couple of times or contacted me because at that point she didn't have a mobile phone. Asking to speak to her. And I said, oh, she doesn't want to speak to you at this moment. He's like, I want to speak to my daughter. It's my entitlement to speak to my daughter. So I said, she doesn't want to speak to you. I said that repeatedly. Eventually he said, you better let me speak to my daughter or I'm going to phone the police. Well, as soon as I heard that, because, it was lockdown, I didn't want the police coming. So I contacted him. I said, look, you can speak to her, but I didn't want to admit to him that she didn't want to speak to him because I didn't want to hurt his feelings. Because even though he is an awful human being, I don't want to be an awful human being. So I didn't want to hurt his feelings. And I didn't want him to, when he spoke to her, chastise her for not wanting to speak to him. So I didn't say anything. And he saw that message. I know he saw that message because the app showed me that he'd seen it. But then the next day, somebody buzzes to get in. And I live in these converted flats. It was a hotel at one point. And I let them in, and then I see two police officers, and I'm like, I wonder who they're for. I'm looking through the spyglass. I wonder who they're for. And then they're looking around, and then they walk towards my door, and they knock. And I'm like, oh my God. I open the door, and they say, are you Abena Akuffo-Kelly? I said, yes. And do you have a daughter called, and I won't say her name. And I said, yes. Can we speak to her, please? I said, what's this about? They said, can we speak to her, please? At that point, my daughter was in her princess era. She's not anymore. She had this poncho on, this pink poncho, knitted poncho with pink fur rim. She had her hair up. She had a dress on underneath. She had her hair up in a bun, and I think she had a tiara on as well. When I saw that they were coming to the door, I told her to go into her room. So now I called her out, and she said, yes, mommy, looking all happy and, because and twirling with her princess clothes. They saw that straight away, and they said, it's all right, we don't need to speak to her. And I said, could you go back in? And they said, we're really, really sorry. Had to do that because it's lockdown, and obviously children are not going out, nobody's going out. And your ex-partner, your ex-husband contacted us and said that he was worried about the welfare of his child. And so we had to come and check. And I showed them the messages, and I said, look, can you see that point when I said that he can speak to her? I said, he has used you to abuse me. That's what he's done. He can't, because he's in Florida, he can't touch me from there. So he's contacted the police so that you can come and abuse and terrorize me. He knows full well that his daughter is fine. She's been living with me for all these years. He lives all the way in America. He doesn't look after her on a day-to-day basis. He knows she's fine. He did that because he wanted to terrorize me. And one of the police officers, they were both women, they said, yeah, I have one like that as well. We're really sorry. We'll never come to your door again. We'll put a note on your file. And if he ever contacts us, we will speak to him. We're really, really sorry. I was crying. I'm somebody who doesn't, I'm very, very particular about following the rules, following the law, everything. And I actually chair an independent advisory group for with the police. So I work with the police in that way. I've never been in trouble with the police. So that was major to me. I remember contacting him and saying, why did you do that? He said, and as he said this, as he smiled, I was worried about my child. That's how disgusting that person is. So yes, people don't know that, but just because, and I want to say this, and this is so important, just because that person was like that towards me, just because I was treated like that, just because I was terrorized by that, that does not stop me from being a strong woman. That does not stop me from feeling joy. That does not stop me from being able to achieve and strive and succeed in life. That is not what defines who I am. That is something that happened to me. I'm not ashamed of it because I have nothing to be ashamed of. And if there's anybody who's listening who has experienced things like that, you have nothing to be ashamed of. You didn't do anything. That person did what they did because of who they are, not because of who you are. That's really, really important to hear. The reason that maybe you might stay is because of who you are and because you want to see something better in somebody, or because you think that you won't be able to cope without them. You will be able to cope and you'll be able to thrive without them. I'm telling you now.
Abena, you've rendered me speechless. I'm hearing this firsthand just as I've asked this question, and I'm I'm sorry that you went through that, but I can see the growth that you've had through the experience. But I want to thank you for how you quite eloquently shared such a painful aspect of what you've experienced, because there's so many women that have experienced, gone through, grown through, or still going through. And I'm really grateful for the way you approach domestic abuse. A lot of women I've spoken to myself think, well, I'm not going through domestic abuse because he doesn't hit me. I'm not allowed to touch my money, or I'm not allowed to have friends over, I'm not allowed to do this, or I'm not allowed to do that. And a lot of women are still not aware that there is emotional abuse, there is
That's
financial.
coercive control. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm so glad the way you framed each element of that. Um, it, 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 it really knocked me for six. I've actually grown through a very similar situation. So as you were speaking, I was just so silent and just listening, but I can understand some aspects of what you went through. And I just want to commend you for the growth and strength. And I love the fact that you ended with saying that it's not a reflection of who you are. It
No.
really isn't. And as far too often women blame themselves for what they
Yep.
experience. And especially if they don't have support systems. And I think that's the hard part. And this is really what this podcast is about. It's reaching women that don't have no one to talk to. It's reaching women that are at home and they just don't know what it is. And they're just hanging on by, a strand of hair.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
need that encouragement. So I want to thank you for being so transparent, so open, so vulnerable. I really want to thank you for giving such a wholesome response to that. But really, really great to hear that you got that support that you needed. So you had that legal support. I know a lot of men have threatened to send police and various things to check on the welfare of their children when they know all too well that their children are taken care of and loved. And it's such a shame because a lot of women that I meet just want the best for the children. They want to
Mm.
grow that child in the love between both parents. It's not like they don't want the parent around. They
Yeah,
just want
exactly. And I
toxicity.
would love that. I would have loved that. But unfortunately, it wasn't going to be. And that person does not even deserve to call themselves a parent. They really, really don't. That's not what a parent should be. And, you know, it sounds a bit odd to say this, but the other day when he texted her, this is a girl who he had phoned the police on me on because apparently he was worried about her welfare, who he tried to speak to once every week, but she didn't want to speak to him. And I had to be dealing with him all the way through, for the last couple of years and sort of keep him at arm's length so that she didn't have to be subjected to him too much. Since he left last summer, he's been texting her. He hasn't even spoken to her. He's been texting her. And then he texts her to say, I am not coming. That's the sort of parent he is. Parent. And so he is a loser of the highest order, and he is not a parent. And I'm actually ashamed. I know it sounds weird and but I'm ashamed that that is the person that I had a child with. I'm not ashamed of my child. My child is awesome. And it's only because I had that child that I don't regret being with him. If I hadn't had my daughter, I would regret immensely having been with him. But if I hadn't been with him, I wouldn't have my child. So I have to thank God for that. But of all the people in the world, I ended up with somebody like that. And it's them, not me. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to pretend. When I used to teach, I used to tell my students I'm 99.9% perfect. So there's a little bit that isn't. I'm not perfect, but I don't deserve that. And again, that's another thing to remember. You don't have to be this perfect, amazing woman who dresses all nicely all the time, who's incredibly intelligent, who treats your husband with, or your partner, whatever, perfectly all the time. None of us are perfect. But it doesn't matter. You don't, nobody deserves to be treated in that way. No one. No one. Even if you are somebody who, maybe you don't clean the house as much as you're supposed to, whatever. We're still living. Like, nobody deserves that as a partner.
There's never an excuse or justification
No.
for abuse, and I think it's just respect both ways. And it's sad, even when talking about domestic abuse, it happens with to women and men. And I think I just want to highlight that for the purpose of the listeners, that we all go through different things. But yourself, Abena, you're speaking about your journey, and that's the journey that you experienced. That's the journey you were made to deal with. And thank God that you and your daughter are thriving and soaring and living your dreams, and building each other and supporting each other with love. And I'm really just grateful for you sharing that aspect of yourself with us. Thank you so much.
No problem.
So the next question I have
Yeah.
is, how has motherhood challenged your sense of identity?
Oh, I remember there was one point where, when they're old enough to start having birthday parties, and they have play dates all the time, and you're known as your child's mother. Like, people don't even say your name. Or people would actually come up to you and they'll say, mother, or the children would even say somebody's mother. They wouldn't actually say your name. And it's like, you'll have these mummy friends who you go to all these parties with, and some of them won't even know your name. To be honest, I have actually got several mummies on my on my phone contacts, and I've just put Lucy's mum or Anna's mum. I don't know their name. My daughter's given me the parent's name, haven't bothered telling me the actual name of the parent, and I just know it's the parent of this child. So you sort of, it's really odd, because you do stop existing, especially as a woman. Men, I don't think it happens to as much. But as a woman, you become known as, first and foremost, mother. And the sense of being other than mother goes. And the actual sort of guilt that you're made to feel if you try to step out of mother only, it's immense. By definition, as soon as you have a child, mother is your title, and that is your most important title, and no other title supersedes that. And if it does, then you're a very selfish, horrible person. And for a while, I did that. I mean, I used to be a teacher, so I was teaching in this private school. It was brilliant for myself and my daughter. I before I got married, I had her. I was working in another school, and then I got a job after I came back from maternity in this private school. And for a while, she had a childminder, and then the private school allowed me to send her there, and because they had a little class which was like pre-school, and I remember it was cheaper to send her there than to actually pay for my childminder. So I was like, and she was on site with me. She was on site with me. So all her teachers knew me. It was it's honestly, it was so beautiful. Like, when I think back, I'm so proud of myself for getting that sorted for us at that time in our life, because everything was so easy for us. After I got divorced from her dad, that school sort of saved me, because everything was on site for us. So we had the senior school and the junior school on site. I worked in the senior school. The junior school was across the way. So I crossed some grass and I got to the junior school. I think it took me like, 5 minutes, less than that. I would drop her off at the door of the junior school and then drive around the corner to the gate for my office.
Amazing.
And I'll drop her off. And then what would happen is that we had this beautiful close. We had lots of gardens and greenery. We had what we call the refectory. It's a private school. You can't call it canteen. And we had the chapel as well. And what would happen is that I might be walking around the close and she would be walking with her friends to go and do something in the garden or something because they had forest school. And they all knew me, so they'll all wave at me. And
Oh.
she was like, she felt really special because everybody knew her mummy and she could just wave at her mummy. And one of my most precious, oh, I just love this memory so much, was that I was the head of department for computer science, IT. So I had this building where we had the IT suites. And we only had 2 rooms. And if her class were coming to use one of the rooms, I would go into the other room. Every single time she had IT, she would ask to go to the toilet. And then she would come out of her classroom, go into my classroom, which was next door, and come and give me a hug as I was sitting at my desk.
Oh, that's so
And
gorgeous.
then she would go to toilet and then she'll go back to work.
Oh.
And that's such a precious moment. I'll just be sitting there working away, and suddenly she'll walk in, step down into my room, and then she'll come, love you, mummy, and come and give me a hug. And then she'll say, bye, mummy. And then she'll go into the toilet and go back to her class. That was so wonderful. And I have that, it was a boarding school as well. So it was day and boarding. So all the children knew her, all the boarders thought she was the cutest. And to be honest, she honestly, like I even sent her a picture in for modeling. And then I was like, oh, I can't be bothered with all of that backwards and forwards and stuff. And we won't do that. But like she was so, and she still is so gorgeous, like so gorgeous. And all the children would be like, oh my God, she's so cute. She's like, oh, she's so beautiful. And if I needed any babysitting, they would do it for me. It was a whole family, like in one little unit. It was wonderful. But yes, after a while, I stayed at that place because it was perfect for us. But then I just wasn't challenged. I was bored out of my brains. It was too easy. And after maybe 3 or 4 years of finding it too easy and being bored, I had to leave. And I left, and there was so much guilt because I knew how easy it was for her. She was in a class of 8. That's all she knew, to be in a class of 8. And I remember when I first took her to a state school and she went into a classroom. I think there was 30 of them in the class. And I said, after she had the day there, I said, how was it? She said, it was very loud, mummy. Well, compare 8 with 30, it's going to be loud. But I'm really glad that I did that because she's not streetwise at all, but she's a little more streetwise and she's met different types of people and she appreciates herself more. When she was there, all of the other children were white, quite a lot of them with blonde hair. I've never seen so many blonde children in my whole life. And I remember her coming home one day and saying, Mummy, I want to have white hair like the other children. And I felt so bad. I said, but your hair is beautiful. You're beautiful. What do you mean? And it's blonde, not white. I told her. But then when she left that school, and from every other school that she's been in, everybody has absolutely loved her hair to the point where she's got she feels really amazing about her hair. Like people always say, oh my God, your hair's so beautiful. I want your hair. She wouldn't have had that. She felt inadequate in that school because she was the only black one. In other schools, in the area that we live in, she still is mostly the only black one, but they appreciated her more for her uniqueness. And so, yeah, I did decide after years that I was going to look after myself as well. And I was going to do what fed my soul. And there was a lot of guilt behind it. But then I thought, because I always go back to what is good for my child, I thought to myself, would I want her to have a life in the future where she sacrificed everything that she wanted to achieve, all her aspirations for the sake of other people? Is that a good role model to set for her, like a message that I should give her? And I said to myself again, no, because I don't want her to sacrifice herself. I want her to understand that she is of value as well. Whether you have a parent, you're a parent or not, you are still an individual. You still have dreams. You still have goals. You might have some dreams and goals which include your children. Yes, but you are still an individual. And you know what? Your child is also an individual. You sacrificing yourself all the time for the sake of your child is not being a good role model for your child at all. In fact, what it teaches your child is when you become a mother as well, forget about everything that you want to do and become a slave to your child also. When you're in a relationship, be a slave to your partner, because you're setting the blueprint of what your child is going to be in the future. So actually, for me now, it is my goal to teach my child that she can be independent of her child and independent of her partner, but also still be in a relationship with her partner and in a relationship with her child. You do not have to mold into one being to be a good parent.
Well, that's so you've actually shared so much there. It takes me back to a time I remember being in a coaching session when I was about 31. I remember my coach asking me a simple question, like, what does your shopping list look like? And I started rambling, like what my partner liked, what my children liked.
Mm,
I said, what do you get for yourself? And I said, I don't have a favorite anything. I didn't buy my favorite drink. I didn't buy, cereal. I ate whatever was in the house. And more importantly, to the point of what you shared is like, as a woman, sometimes we get to a point in our life where there's this emotional erosion, like you just fade away, or you
yeah,
put on the dining table, everyone comes to the table for dinner and everyone goes away and you're just constantly serving. And it was at that moment I realized like I was everything to everyone, but who was I to myself? I wasn't in my life. And it was at that time I started to insert myself into my own life. So I really love the fact that you've shared that aspect of you with the listeners and viewers to just get them to reflect on their own journey. Like, where are they? Are you putting out a message that mum doesn't need to be fed, mum doesn't need to be watered, mum doesn't need space, she's just here on demand to serve? And as much as we love our families, we want to pour into our families, there's nothing wrong. And I love what you said, don't feel guilty about taking time for yourself. I think it's so important. And they always say that children are so much happier when they look at their mum. They're always looking at you. Like, if you just use your
yes,
peripheral
they
view,
are,
they are
honestly.
always looking. Like, I'll catch my sons when I'm out and they can see, my daughters, they would just see, they know when you're smiling. They know when you're not feeling so good. Even if you are smiling, they know that
Yeah,
quite the same smile. So they're constantly watching us and they do draw a lot of their happiness through seeing you happy and content.
yes,
So
yes.
as you love on you, it helps them a lot. So thank you so much. Really beautiful to share that. The next question I have is, can you describe a time when you felt completely unseen or unsupported as a mother?
Hmm. I think in general, being a single mum means that I am unseen because a lot of people assume, because of the way that I speak, the way that I look, the way that I hold myself, that I'm not a single mother, that I have a partner, that I have somebody who's supporting me. So it's not necessarily a good or bad thing. It's just the reality of the fact that people have a perception of what single mothers should be like. And one thing that we haven't touched upon, but I'll touch upon it now because it's a really it was a really great anecdote. So when I divorced my ex-husband, I did some soul searching and I went to counseling, and then I came out to myself because I realized, oh, actually you are gay. Before then, I hadn't really allowed myself to think too much about it. So the reason why I say that is because I once when I did do online dating, I don't do it now and I will never do it again. Um, I met this woman doing online dating, and she came to visit. And I was like, I don't want to bring her back to my home or anything. Let's just I thought we were just going to go for a walk. But unfortunately, it was raining. And I thought, oh. we can't stay out in the rain. So, okay, you can come to my house, because my house wasn't that far away. So my house is a bit of a TARDIS. So you might think that it's smaller than it is. And I don't know if you can hear the echoing. I'm in my sitting room and it's really, really high. And it's quite grand as well. So she walked in through the corridor and I'd already sat down. Yeah, I don't know why I happened to sit down so quickly before she even walked in. But I was sitting down and she walked in and she said, "How can you afford this?" I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, you're a single parent. How can you afford this?" So her understanding of being single, a single parent, is that you were poor and you couldn't manage your finances and you were living in, abject poverty. And I think she thought that she was going to come and save me. So when she walked into my sitting room and realized that I perhaps had more money than her, especially because she then asked me if I was renting it, and I said, no, it's my home. It's mortgaged. That made her think otherwise. So there's this perception as a single parent that life is going to be difficult for you. And to be honest, for most single parents, it is. I mean, it's one income rather than two, especially if you have multiple children. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a good life. And I think, I have had difficult times, but again, those difficult times don't define me, and those difficult times are not the end of my story.
Absolutely not, just the beginning. So my next question is, what has been the most rewarding aspect of motherhood for you?
The pure, unadulterated love. There are other people in your life who can love you. I mean, even the partner that you have your child with will love you, or, hopefully they do. But there's nobody who can love you like your child. They draw so much from you. As you were saying earlier, they're watching you all the time. They're learning from you. You are their blueprint for the rest of their lives. And everything that you do is so important to them, even when they're teenagers like mine is at the moment, and they sometimes pretend that they're not watching you or they're not interested in what you're talking about. Everything, they're just soaking in everything from you. But also, the love that you get from them is so pure. It's so beautiful. It's like looking into the clearest, most pure sort of crystal waters. You can see completely through it. And that water is just, it's cold, it's the right temperature, and it's so sweet to drink. And it fills you with a new life force. Whenever I feel down, I think about the human being that I've created, the human being that I have helped to grow up. And I'm so proud of myself. I'm so proud of who they are. I'm so proud of who they're going to be. I'm so proud of who they were. And yeah, that's the most precious gift.
Wow, that's so poetic. It's beautiful. Really, really
My
beautiful.
daughter says that sometimes. Why are you so poetic? You just answer a question and you're talking like you're speaking poetry or something. I said, I can't help it. It's who I am.
I love teenagers. I love the way they speak to their parents. um, what advice would you to make me laugh? What advice would you give to your younger self about before becoming a mother?
Hurry up. Hurry up and do it. It's wonderful. You're missing out.
Oh, oh, I love that. Jump into it. Oh, I love that. Hurry up. Right, next question
Yeah.
is How do you, can't stop laughing. How do you balance the emotional weight of being a mother whilst pursuing your personal dreams and aspirations?
I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier. I think it is possible at intervals, not all the time, to be able to do both, for them to both align. So by virtue of actually going towards my dreams and achieving them and doing all sorts of number of things that I do, it inspires my daughter. And it, in some ways there'll be things that she sees and she's like, oh, I definitely want to do that sort of thing when I'm older. And in other ways, there'll be things that she sees and she's like, no, I've seen my mum do that. I'm not interested. So for example, she says, oh, I want to be a businesswoman. You spend all your time helping people. It doesn't pay as well. You wouldn't earn proper money. You are so nice. I think you're too nice. She says, you're too nice. I'm not going to be that nice. I don't have time for people. And I'm like, okay, okay, that's cool. That's cool. So, in anything that you do, you help your child decide on who they want to be, because they can either rebel against what you're doing or they can be repelled towards it, I suppose, or propelled towards it. There are other times where I do know that I have to sort of put a pause on something that I want to do so that I can take care of my child. Because what she might want to do might not align with what I want to do. And that's fine. But I think the most important thing is not to do that too much. Yeah. So in the past, I used to do it all the time, where I would just do what I knew my daughter needed from me at that time, because I didn't understand at that point that actually what she needs more than anything is a well-adjusted mother who is mentally healthy, who emotionally is secure, financially is secure. Because when she sees that joy in me, that is what, you know, inspires her. So sometimes I used to do things which I thought, oh, this is what my daughter needs. But she needed me to actually say, no, I'm not going to do that as well. Because she needs to learn that you don't have to say yes to everything that somebody else needs, that sometimes you have to say yes to yourself.
Yeah.
And so I started saying yes to myself to teach her to be able to say yes to herself as well. And be, and I love Audre Lorde, who was a Black lesbian mother, poet, writer. And I do a lot of training. So I do leadership, EDI, I coach, whatever. And I try to quote Audre Lorde as much as I can. So one of her quotes I absolutely love is self um self-care is not selfish, it's self-preservation, and therefore it's an act of political warfare. So I remember that I'm not being selfish by looking after myself. And sometimes I will admit there are times when I should be looking after myself and I don't. I'm going to tell you, I'm not perfect, as I said before. But it is so powerful to look after yourself. And whenever I do my training, my little joke is, if anybody ever tells you off, or they're saying you're being lazy, if you're sitting with a biscuit and a cup of tea with your feet up, and they say, why are you relaxing? Why aren't you doing anything? You say, I am waging political warfare right now. That's what I'm doing. Okay.
I
As
love
I sit,
with the biscuit
I'm,
hanging.
I'm waging warfare.
Yeah, I love that. That's so important though. Self-care is absolutely important. But yeah, it just makes me laugh because in observation of our own behaviors, our children will be like, no, that's definitely not going to happen to me. So it's
Yeah.
interesting how they form those beliefs as a result of what they see us do or don't do. So I
Yes.
know that I was very much like that. I was a people pleaser for many years of my life.
Oh,
And my
God
children,
save us from being people
oh
pleasers.
yes, my children, they knocked that out of me very quickly and they just said, absolutely not, mum, you can't do that. No, this is not how it's going to happen. And I'm definitely do that. They ran the opposite direction. And I think my son came up with something: if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense. And it wasn't that he didn't like helping people. He just said that if he wants to help people, he needs to be able to have the finance behind it to do so. So I thought, yeah, it's actually a plausible statement. So I agreed, and I had to shift up the way I did stuff. So my next question for you is, can you share a lesson that you've learned from your own mother or a mother figure that has shaped the way you parent today?
Well, I've learned loads of lessons from my mother. There's one that I'm always talking about, and there are two that I always use. So one of them is when sea dry, go by land.
Mm.
So basically, it's pigeon, but it basically means if you had a particular route that you wanted to follow, and that route is no longer available, find another route. So when sea dry, go by land. That's the alternative route. Do that. And one of the things that I absolutely love about myself, and in fact, I was giving myself a pat on the back about it the other day. I used to not give myself pats on the back. And I was like, you know what? Whenever people do well, you're telling them how amazing they are. And you say that to do the same for your daughter. Why don't you do it for yourself? If nobody's here to congratulate you, you congratulate yourself. You buy yourself some flowers and you revel in what you've achieved. Because otherwise, all you do is achieve, 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 next, 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 next.
Very
And you
true.
never celebrate it. So one of the things that I was celebrating about myself the other day, I was like, wow, when somebody comes up with a block to me doing something, I just find another way. And then I find this other way and then it's so successful. I'm like, what? And it's like people trying to block me propels me. I'm like, okay, you think I can't do that? Watch me. I'll find a way. And so I was just like, I was thinking about it the other day and I was like, I can't believe what you've managed to do when people have basically tried to stop you and you've actually excelled beyond what you were planning to do originally because that person put a block in the way. Amen. So yeah, that's one
That's
that's one
awesome.
thing that I always remember.
That is so awesome. It's very true. If you can't go under, go over. It's
Yeah.
just finding a way. So next question is, how do you define success as a mother?
Doing the best that I can with what I've got.
I like that. That's really nice.
That's it. Other people might be able to do something different, but that's what they have.
Mm,
You know, if you compare yourself with other people, you'll be saying, oh, I can't. Well, maybe you can't do that because you don't have the actual facilities or the skills or whatever. You do what you can do. And if you're doing the best that you can do, then what else can you do?
exactly. That's really good wisdom, a golden nugget of wisdom to the listeners and viewers is do what you can with what you have. Like, don't constantly compare yourself. To some extent, it causes stagnation.
Yes.
Constantly comparing yourself, you're not allowing your own growth to take place. Like, you might need to go a bit slower, you might need to do it a little different. I know our lives were very different to people that were around us, and had we not surrendered into just doing things as we wanted, we could do, we wouldn't
Yeah.
be where we are today. So I really like that. I think that's so important because sometimes there's so much pressure on how we need to show up. So thanks, that's really important. The next question is, if you could rewrite, can't get my words, if you could rewrite your motherhood journey, what would it be and why?
I wouldn't rewrite it. I am proud of who I am, where I am. I'm proud of my daughter, who she is and where she is. Why would I want something different?
Like, that's nice, really nice. Next question. How has societal pressures influenced the way you view or approach motherhood?
I think not necessarily just societal, but at one point when I was still married, I know that my mother, because she truly believes this is how it should be done. I don't, but that's another thing altogether. I remember she told me to do everything. for my daughter, everything. And not let the father do anything at all, especially because if he found that it was easy having a child, he would want another one, because it didn't impact him so much. So I remember, I love, when I recount some of the things that I've done in the past, it just makes me laugh. It really makes me laugh. And again, for some people will be like, are you all right? Are you all right, Abner? But when I see some of the ways that my exes sort of spoke to me, I laugh. I laugh because I'm like, there's no way they would have a hell in chance of being able to speak to me like that now. Crazy people. But yeah, so I remember there was one day, oh well, no, this happened every day basically. When she was still a baby and she used to go to the childminder, I would wake up the night before because I really am like, I'm really too much sometimes. I would make her every weekend. I would make her her own special cereal
Oh.
that she would have at the childminders, because I asked the childminder once when she started eating food what she would feed her, and I did not like the answer that she gave, so I would make her food for her. So I had this little tub, and I would put some desiccated coconut. I would put in some oats, then some raisins, some really, really fine nuts, and I can't remember what else was in there. And I'll mix it all up and I'll make that, and she would have that as breakfast. And then I would actually make 3 or 4 different meals. And honestly, I'm laughing at and I'd have these little containers. So I'll actually make her own ready-made meals. And I knew exactly what had gone into them. So sometimes it would be, I had a rotation of, spaghetti bolognese. I did this sort of Moroccan tagine with couscous,
Machine, but oh wow, yeah.
with couscous and chickpeas and peach and sort of dried peaches and some other stuff that I cooked as well. And I'll have that. It'll all be frozen, and I'll put it into a bag, and I'll put the cereal into a bag. Then I'll have my laptop. So I'll have my laptop on one shoulder, the bag full of her supplies for the week on the other shoulder, and then her on my hip. And whilst I was doing that, my ex-husband would be in bed. One day I actually asked him, could you help me out and help me to the car with? No, I'm sleeping. Don't disturb me. And because at that point I was listening to my mother, I thought, okay, I'll do all of this myself. So you should have seen me heading out with a laptop bag for work, her supplies for my daughter, and my actual daughter on my hips. All of those things, when in fact I had somebody in bed who actually made that child with me sleeping. And I did that because my mother told me that's what I should do. Earlier you were asking about what you regret. I regret it, but I don't regret it because everything that's happened to me led to me being who I am now. I don't know if I took away something, then I wouldn't be who I am. So I accept it as what I experienced. So a lot of the time I was the one who looked after our child. I remember once, it wasn't until she was about 2 that I actually left her with her father, like for more than an hour or two. And he called it babysitting. And I was actually worried about my daughter. I was crying whilst I was away because I just thought, what is he doing? I have no idea what he's doing. And because he is such a mean person, and mean as in monetary as well as mean as in, of spirit, God knows what he's feeding her. She could be feeding her half gone off food because it was cheap to buy. I was really, really worried, but I had to let go of that because I had to remember that he was equally a parent, an awful parent, but he was still equally a parent. And I had to give him the space to be able to parent his child. Badly, but he was still a parent.
That's very deep, very deep. It's a reality all too real for so many. Yeah, it's very deep. So the next question I have is, what role has community played in your journey? Has it been a source of strength or something that you struggled with?
I'll be entirely honest. There have been people who have helped me along the way as a mother. Some of them, I'll have to be honest again, were not people who had my best interest at heart, but they helped me anyway. There's some people will say there are fair weather friends and bad weather friends. There are some people who they like to they like you to be around. It happens with friend groups where one person is fatter than the others as well. They like you to be around because they like people to compare you with them and to think that they're more attractive because you're the fat one, or you have lots of issues, you have lots of things that you're fighting, lots of demons that you're fighting, and they like to be there to help you with that because that makes them feel good about themselves, that they're helping you, but it also makes them feel good about themselves that they're not you. So a sense of Schadenfreude, taking pleasure in other people's misery. And I think there were some people who did help me at that time, but where their desire to help me came from was from that place of liking the fact that I was struggling, especially when I first got divorced. It wasn't for long though, because then I actually realized that there was no need for me to be struggling and I was actually better off. And I had more than enough money and it was fine. But, for a short while, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to cope? What am I doing? And being a single mother as well, it's not the same as, having a partner. If you need to go somewhere, you need to plan who's going to look after your child for you to go there. I could not step out of the house and go to something without, it was only the last 2 years, no, 1 year actually, that I have been able to step out the house and not have to worry about getting a babysitter. So yeah, there were people who did help me at that time. They did give me help, but also at the same time, whilst they were giving me help, they were being disrespectful. They were they were seeing this thing. We go back to this thing about how people view people who are single parents. They were siphoning some sort of joy out of the fact that I was not in the most perfect place that I could have been. So I had loads of people who helped me and they would look after my daughter if I had to go somewhere overnight or whatever, if I was delivering some training and I had to go and do something. And that was really, really great. But yes, some of them did not have my best interest at heart or and then also oddly for me, I live very, very far away from the rest of my family. And I live in an area where there aren't many Black people anyway. So I didn't always feel like part of the community. And I didn't get the sort of support from the majority of the community that I got from some of the Black mothers that I got support from. So, in Africa, we have that saying that it takes a village to raise a child. And, I knew that there were lots of African mothers who I could look after their child overnight. They could just drop off their child. They could phone me that day and say, "Oh, could you go and pick up my daughter?" And I would be able to do that. But a lot of the people who I spent time with were not African, and they did not have that mentality. So they did not offer that sort of help. They wouldn't have your child overnight unless, they had planned the sleepover way in advance. They would not pick up your child. Sometimes, you would phone and they'll pretend that they weren't there because they didn't want to do something like that. Or you knew not to ask them because you knew that's not the way that they think. And you know what? This is really, really important to put across. Not every culture is like that. Not everybody thinks that way. And that's okay. And that is okay. But one of the things that I realized was that what I was willing to offer to other people is not what everybody was willing to offer to me. And I had to come to terms with that. And again, it's okay. It's a lot easier now anyway, thank God, but it is okay. One of the things that I've learned is that you need to accept people for who they are. And actually, it's toxic for you to expect people to behave exactly like you. If you're in a situation with somebody who does not behave in the way that you see is the right way to behave, it doesn't align with what you believe in, then let them be who they are and move on and engage with other people. But don't try to force them to be like you. They are who they are. So, yeah.
But you've shared quite a wholesome response, and I think some of the things that stand out is finding your tribe, and it is wisdom to know that people won't treat you the way you treat them. It's finding your tribe, and in that tribe you can begin to thrive. There's a quote I came across, I don't know word for word, but it's something along the lines of, if you take a look at your community, is it a prison or does it liberate you? Either you could be caged or you can be supported to grow. And I think, a lot of what you shared is really just being mindful and contextual about what are the support systems that I have within my community, and do I need to pivot in context? What support do I have professionally, personally, and what are my needs? What am I struggling with now, and finding those spaces. But you also mentioned quite an interesting insight with regards to friendship groups and those dynamics. I think as women, we'll be aware of what you're discussing. And sometimes if you're the person within the group that always has the problems, as you begin to grow, do you feel comfortable that you're no longer the person that has the problem?
Yeah.
And just
I've seen that happening, and it's really saddened to me, but I can't remain in one place to make you feel good about yourself. That's not my job. That's not my job. I used to do that. I told you I used to do that. I had a friend who I could see in certain instances that she needed me to be a certain way to make her feel good about herself. And at that time, when I was in this mental prison that I was in, I would see that, and then I would allow her to say things to me just because I knew that that made her feel good, but it didn't make me feel good. And then eventually I just decided, no, 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 no. Mm-mm. That's not a friend. This friend is a friend who I treated like a sister.
Oh.
Like I didn't even think of her as a friend. She was a sister to me. But then I just kept on hearing all these things that she would say and really listening to what she was saying. And sometimes I didn't even have to listen that deeply. She was actually really insulting me.
Wow.
And I thought, obviously, in the past, I would be like, obviously, you need to say this because there's something wrong with you. And this maybe helps you feel better. And as I said, I was quite messed up in the past, and I'll be like, okay, I'll allow you to say that because it will help you. And I'm going to help you. That's how I'm going to help you. And then it got to a point when I said to myself, no, somebody who cares about you and loves you would not want to say such things to you. They
Mm.
would love you for who you are, and they would actually amplify the amazing things about you rather than trying to demoralize you, demote you. So this person doesn't love you the way that you love them. And this person is not the sister that you're saying that she is. She's not at all. Stop lying to yourself. Stop lying to yourself and see what this person is. And so I just started slowly. Well, actually, no, it wasn't slow. It was pretty fast. Just stopped interacting with this person completely because they were not for me. And you know, they say this thing about skin folk are not kinfolk. Just because somebody's black or they come from the same sort of diaspora as you doesn't mean that they can be your friend.
Very, very true. You know what I love? You know, you spoke about the dynamics of how we use the spirit of discernment with our friendship groups, because people really are in our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. But also, we've got to know, you know, are they the roots? Are they the stump? Or are they the branches? Or are they the leaves? And we all know that each one of them plays a different role. And it's painful at times, but it's really important to know that we shouldn't be belittled in friendships. And if
No.
someone is making you feel a certain way, it's for us to lift the veil and realize, like, is this how we should be true? Should I be willing to be treated? So, you know, that's really nice what you shared. And the next question I have is, how do you cope with the guilt or doubts that motherhood often has? Mother guilt, isn't it? That's the term.
One of the things that, one of the many things that I've been working on over the last couple of years is just owning whatever emotion I have and accepting it, working through it, and working to the other side of it. A lot of the time we stop ourselves from feeling things because you think we shouldn't be feeling this, it's wrong, whatever. But you know what? If your body, if your mind feels it and thinks it, then respect what your body, your mind feels and thinks, and allow yourself to feel it. What happens a lot with people is that they stop themselves from processing certain memories, processing certain experiences, and it just builds. It doesn't disappear. Just because you're like, oh, I feel guilty about, looking after myself here rather than like looking after my child. But I don't have time to think about it right now, or oh, you shouldn't feel guilty about that. And then you just, cross it out and pretend that it's not happening. Well, your body knows it's still happening. Your mind still has it there because you haven't processed it. It'll come back, and it might come back tenfold next time. So whatever emotion I'm feeling, I feel it. When I'm feeling joyful, I enjoy, I revel, I roll myself like a pig in the mud of my enjoyment. Because I know, as it says in the Bible, to everything there's a season. So that's my enjoyment season. I'm going to enjoy. And then when I am not feeling so great, or there's something going on that makes me feel pretty rubbish, I sit in that and I try to figure out why. What is going on? And sometimes, I'll say, you know what, this isn't particularly logical that I'm feeling this way, but it's the way I'm feeling, and I'm going to allow myself to feel it, and I'm going to allow myself to cry. If I want to cry, let me cry. And then I cry and I think through all the things that I want to think through. And then I just carry on because I've given myself the time to process that. So mother guilt will come because we have been socialized to believe that as mothers, we shouldn't have a life beyond being mothers. As mothers, we should sacrifice everything about ourselves. To be honest, if you think back to it, some of us, when we were pregnant, I, I say to my daughter, because when we're having a laugh, I said, children are basically a parasite When you're in your no, but it's true though, isn't it? When you are in your mother's womb, you're basically a parasite that is taking everything. That's why you get the NHS gives you a free prescription when you are pregnant, because your baby is basically taking every single element of you. They're feeding off of you. Is that not true? Now, I'm not saying parasite. I'm laughing about it because it's not parasite in the way that, they're going to completely take everything of you. They're taking that of you because there's nowhere else they can get the food. They have to get it from you. But that's what they do. So even when you're pregnant, every sinew of who you are is being taken by your child. When they come out of the womb, and they've grown to a point where they can become a little bit more independent, you don't need them to take more of you for the rest of your life. Part of being a human, part of being an adult is looking after yourself. They need to learn to look after themselves, and you need to be able to look after yourself as well and thrive without being taken from all the time. So I'm going to feel guilt sometimes because I've been socialized to feel guilt, but doesn't mean that like it's a bad thing per se. Sometimes it's something which is telling you, actually, maybe you're being a little bit too selfish here. Maybe you should incorporate some of what your child's needs are in this plan that you're making. Sometimes it's just there because it's learned behavior. And so I listen to myself. I process what's going on, and I decide, is this just learned behavior, or is this me telling myself that I'm being too selfish and I need to incorporate some needs of my child at this point? And then I act accordingly. But there's nothing wrong with it. It's just another feeling.
I really love the way you express like how you honor the emotions that show up. I really like when I'm with clients, I often speak about the essence of our emotions being our internal guidance system. So I love the way, like as you describe that, as they percolate, you talk to it. You question, like, what is this reflecting to? And
Mm,
you have a little feel around it, is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? It just is. And this is how I'm feeling. I'm going to accept it. But more important, I'm going to listen to it and see what it's come to teach me. And
yeah.
also, look into parts of my life or areas of my life I might need to look closely. I think that's so important. And it really goes to the power of having a coach in your life or a mentor, just to get us to see those blind spots. But
Mm,
also, when you were talking about carrying a baby, one of the things that came to mind, I can't remember what the actual term is, but there's this beautiful scientific fact that was discovered that as we carry babies, our baby actually sends stem cells to any damaged organs. And that blew my mind, because there's a
mm,
sense how we, we're nurturing this baby into life, but that baby also comes to heal us. It just came to
mm.
mind as you were describing. You just made me laugh. I burst out laughing because I just wasn't expect you to use that term, but which is so funny.
Right, yeah.
I know exactly what you mean, because, as a child, like people around us, they literally just take all the time, and it's understand that we need to replenish ourselves to be able to depart. As the saying goes, biblically speaking, is as our cup runneth over. So we have to ensure that our cup is running over, so we have enough for ourselves and to share
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
that. But you gave a really wholesome response. Sorry, I was muting. The neighbors started drilling at that point, so it's just like
Oh,
mute.
oh, okay, okay. I didn't hear it.
Oh, good. I wasn't sure if it was going through. So the next question I have is, what do you wish people understood about the emotional labor that it takes to be a mother?
Hmm. I think there's an emotional labor needed to be anything, really, like anything. Um, but it goes back to the guilt feeling, and I think that is the heaviest load, the guilt. Um, and not being able to just think about yourself. Once you become a mother, you will never, ever, ever be able to make a decision based on only your needs. Um, I assume, I mean, my child isn't of that age yet. I assume that when they become an adult and maybe they're married, they have a home, or whatever, and they have their own children, maybe that is taken away.
Mm.
Or it's not as needed. But when they put on the form, do you have any dependents? That's what they are. They're completely dependent on you. And that level of responsibility is mind-blowing. Like, especially when they're first born. to, to think that something simple as burping, you need to help that child to burp.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Something as simple as that. There's lots of people out there who finish shooting like all over the place. But you have to actually, that child to
Dependent.
burp. If you do not take care of that child, especially when they're really, really newly born, that child could die.
Very true. It's the reality.
You have absolute responsibility for another living human being. If that is not the scariest thing ever, what else is? I know some people have their furry babies and they love their furry babies, they love their pets, they love their, whatever. I mean, obviously, if you mistreat, or you don't, not necessarily mistreat, but you don't do the right things to nurture your pet, your furry baby, what could happen is RSPCA could, give you a fine or something. Yeah. But if you do not do that with a child, then you could be bringing up an emotionally maladapted human being. You could be setting them up to have an absolutely tortuous life
Mm. True.
if you don't do it right. And that is scary. And I think to the fact that I'm divorced, I'm gay, I'm one of these people who cannot help but do like 10,000 things at once. And I always think, am I doing the right thing? Am I giving her um, the right ideas about the world? Am I instilling her with enough self-love that she never gets into the sorts of relationships that I've been in? Am I setting her up for success? That's it's a heavy load.
Very,
It's very heavy, but we have to carry it.
very true. It comes with the role. It really
Yeah.
comes with the role. Next question is, what legacy do you hope to leave behind for your daughter?
Oh, I think I have left it. And well, at the moment, I don't know when I will pass and what will happen between now and then. But I remember asking her once, if somebody told you that your mummy didn't love you, what would you say? And she said, I'll tell them you don't know my mummy. And I think that's the most precious legacy that I can leave her, that I absolutely love and adore her. And no matter what happens in life, there is at least one person in this world and, out of the world one day who thinks she is absolutely amazing and that she is worthy. She's worthy of love. She's worthy of joy. She's worthy of all the good things. And I truly hope that that will ensure that she loves herself enough to do the right things for her. Because, I won't be making those decisions for her. She'll be making them herself. But that through my love and me showing her how worthy she is of love, that she will love herself and therefore be able to do the right things for herself.
It's beautiful. That's really beautiful. You are very poetic. I agree with your daughter. Next question is, how has motherhood transformed your relationships, be that with a partner, of friendships, or family?
Yes, so well, it transformed my relationship with my ex-husband. It made me leave him. Um, This is one of the most beautiful things about it. Through being a mother and showing her love and seeing how that love made her feel so precious, it transformed my relationship with myself.
Oh,
It made me think, how how can I say that I don't deserve the love that I'm showing her? How can I not give that love to myself? Because I know the power of it. So why don't I deserve it? And actually, it also, I mean, I suppose it's what's made me a good mayor as well. I mean, I have loads of people who say, you're just so great, you're so inclusive, you're here, there, and everywhere. When you're around, you just bring light into the room. And that comes from being a mother. That light started shining more when I became a mother and started being able to practice that sort of love, because it's a very special type of love. It's it's a love that I have. I have a deep, deep, deep love for humanity. I have a love for people. And if anybody ever tells you, I was really rude to somebody or I treated somebody really badly, know that they're lying, because I don't do that. I treat everyone with absolute respect because I respect the essence of who they are, their humanity. The only time that I would treat somebody different is if they've shown me, and they have to show me a couple of times, that they're not a very nice person and that they are willing to treat me badly, and then I will step away from them. It's not that I'll treat them badly. It's just that I will step away and I won't engage with them because I don't have time for that in my life. But yeah, it's yeah, I've said what I need to say.
thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that. It's amazing. I love that the gift of love that your daughter has gifted you to love yourself even deeper. That's really
Yeah.
beautiful. So the next question I have is, what's the most unexpected lesson that you've learned from your daughter?
Um, Before I started, I had more and more people telling me who I am, because I didn't really, I would see it, but I wouldn't really believe it or whatever. I, I had my daughter saying things to me because obviously she watches me like a hawk all the time. She has grown up with me. To be honest, she knows me more than anybody else in the whole world.
Very true.
Yeah, in my most relaxed moments when I'm wearing my gym jams and like I'm looking a complete horror enough to scare other people, she's there. She's there all the time. And one of the things that he said to me was that I just love it so much. She said, "If I had to choose a color for you, mummy, I wouldn't choose one color. I'll choose a rainbow because that's
Oh,
what you are."
oh wow. Oh, that's beautiful.
I know, isn't that beautiful? And
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I see that actually. I understand what you mean. And that's really wonderful. And with all the compliments that people give me about, oh my God, you're so inspirational, you're like a light, you're like sunshine. That epitomizes it. Your rainbow.
That's beautiful. From such a pure place of love to say that. That's lovely.
Exactly. She says I'm poetic, but I think she's poetic too.
Gets it from you. So the next question I have is, if you could change one thing about how society views or supports mothers, what would it be?
This is me putting my feminist hat on. I have my feminist hat on all the time, actually. Um, One of the things that I always talk about is that, I'm Black and I'm also a woman and I'm also all sorts of other things. So I do a lot of training on intersectionality. And, but I always say, like, the most oppressed group in the whole world are women. Because with the other oppressed groups, people recognize that they're oppressed and they say, look, this is what's happening, you know, that's racism, that's this, that's that. But when it comes to women and girls, there are things that happen and we don't even recognize it. Yeah. We just take it as given. So imagine we are 52% of the population, yet we are like a minority. We're treated like a minority. Isn't that mad? Like, you can understand Black people, minuscule percentage of population, they are a minority. They are actually a minority. Women are not a minority, yet they are treated like a minority. Girls can be sold in certain countries, literally sold to old men. We're not up in arms about that. And you know, burning things down and rioting in the streets. When you have a child, if you're in a couple and you have a child, your partner, especially if he's male, if it's two females, it might be slightly different, but especially if he's male, his life basically continues as it was. His job continues as it was. There is no sort of penalty for being a mother or for being a father. There's no penalty. His career trajectory will remain the same. When you become a mother, a lot of women, actually, I'll give an example. In teaching, up until the age of about 32, there is parity in the salary of males and females. After 32, suddenly things start changing because when you have a child, the majority of the time, like 99% of the time, it's the female parent who's expected to stay at home, maybe go part-time, do the actual lion's share of nurturing the child. If she works full-time, she goes to work, comes home, and continues working and isn't paid for it. If we as mothers, as women, took all of that money that we are owed for all of the care, the nurturing that we do, all the countries would be bankrupt. We are seen as being, second-class citizens, as being too emotional. Being emotional is of not of value. Yet, if you think about business, what does business need? Business needs people, it needs personnel. Who brings those people up? Women. Yet, we're ridiculed. We're told, I hear other women talking about women who are in the home looking after their children, like they are beneath them. Are you having a laugh? You're going out to business meetings, business luncheons, enjoying yourself, having a nice meal, being able to relax, thinking about the things that you want to think about, dealing with the things that you want to think about, probably doing one task at a time and being paid very, very well for it. And then there's somebody in the home, perhaps looking after 2, 3, 4 children, having to think on their feet, doing all sorts of different things at the same time, bringing up another human being, and you're looking down them. Absolutely ridiculous. Women have been indoctrinated into believing that what we do as mothers, what we do as women is nothing. It's not nothing. I'm not nothing. Even if I was just sitting at home looking after my child, I am doing an amazing job. It's one of the most precious jobs you can do.
Said. Very well said. So, so true. I can't even add to that. That is, it's devastating to hear. It really is.
But it's true, isn't it? It's true. And I remember I did a woman's march a couple of months ago, and I had to say my speech. And then after I said my speech, everyone was just standing there like, oh my God, I didn't know. So I gave, as part of my speech, I said, tell me the countries in the world where women have equal rights with men. So people were shouting out, Finland, And I can't remember all the other ones they shouted out. And I said, none. There are no countries in the world where women have equal rights with men. Let that sit in. And people were like, yet we don't think about it, do we? We talk about racism. We talk about homophobia. We talk about this. We talk about that. We have no equal rights anywhere in the world with men. Nowhere. Yet we are not, 10% of the population. We're not of the world's population. We're 50% plus. Yet we have no equal rights anywhere. And in fact, with the when it comes to gender parity in regards to pay, apparently it's going to take another 140 years or something before we reach that. What a blooming joke. Yet we don't talk about it enough.
It is a very sad reality, very sad reality. And those figures are staggering because myself, Lachey and Trey are UN women delegates, so that's all part of our training. So it's quite interesting that you've brought that up now. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. I'm not going to add to that. That I think that's just some food for thought for the listeners, definitely. Wow. So we got lots of changes still to be made. It's very,
Indeed.
very sad, and the girl child and the woman is really still victims to so much of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, my next question it's just really landed hard, that one. Gosh, my next question is, what's the most misunderstood of the motherhood journey? What do people sometimes misunderstand?
I always try to add my funny things, but I think labor and time immediately after giving birth, I had no idea. It's like nobody tells you because they don't want to scare you or something. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. There was so many things that I did not know. I went to all the antenatal classes. They did not tell me. They did not tell me. And I remember, I've only had one child. I would have had more, but obviously I divorced my ex-husband and then found out I was gay. And so it's a little bit more difficult for me to have a child. I can't just, oops, I've had a child by mistake. It can't happen. So I remember whilst I was on the table trying to deliver. And coincidentally, that is not the best position for people to deliver. The reason why we lie on tables is just to allow the actual doctors and nurses to be able to see easily. It's not the best. You're actually fighting against gravity. What people used to do before it became all sort of pathologized is actually just squat. Yeah. And then gravity drops the baby. So it actually makes it harder for ourselves, and we actually push harder because of the fact that we're forced to lie on a bed. So I remember there were several things I was saying to my daughter was like 2 weeks overdue. I remember I was told that if you have some really, really hot chili, a really, really hot curry, the baby might come. So I went and had a really hot curry. It was so hot, my tongue was actually burning. Then they said, "Oh, go up a steep hill. There's a really steep hill near here." So we went up that. She still didn't come, so we went up another steep hill, even more steep. And really, it was my mother came to stay with us just before I had my daughter, and so my ex-husband was there. He's very, very selfish, so I expected him not to remember this, and then my brain was all over the place. But my mother. Actually, no, I should have expected him as well. Neither of us remembered to pick up some water or anything to eat, to drink or eat by the time we got to the top of the hill. We got to the top of the hill and I was like, oh my God.
Oh, no.
And luckily, no, but what was really lucky, because I truly believe Jesus loves me. There was a race on that day, a cycle race. The top of that hill was a station for the cyclists. They had bananas and peanuts and water.
No way.
We got up to the top and I was like, oh my God, I'm hungry and I'm thirsty. And there was that station.
Oh my God.
They saw how pregnant I was. So they gave me as many peanuts as I wanted, as many bananas as I wanted, and some water. And we walked back down.
Oh, the chances of that.
I know, imagine. It's so funny. But I remember lying on the bed and I looked up at my midwife, who happened to be pregnant herself, and I said, I now know what hell would be like. Hell would be being in labor for the rest of eternity and never having the baby. She just looked at me and smiled. And then when they were giving me giving me the gas, I was like, this is a placebo. It's not, you're
It's
just
not working.
to have something to do. You just want me to have something to do. It's doing nothing. There's no difference. I can still feel the pain. So they just spent all the time laughing at me. And my mother actually said that she looked at my ex-husband and they both, sort of did a little grin, but they didn't laugh because they were scared of what I might do at that point. But yeah, they both looked at each other like, but they didn't say anything. But I remember like it was pure hell. And I suppose the reason why it's called labor is because you are laboring. And the other thing I remember saying was like, I don't understand why I'm not dead. I said, how can you be in this much pain and still be alive? It's not possible. What can what, why did it be so painful?
Oh, you're so funny.
The midwife was just standing there just laughing and laughing and laughing.
Oh
But
God.
and I remember like the one of the worst things nobody told me about was lochia. They're bleeding. So I was so happy I didn't have periods for like months and months and months. And then it's like your periods come with a vengeance and you are just flooding with blood, 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 blood. I was like, nobody told me this. What the hell is this? Why am I bleeding so much? It's like your periods are just like catching up, months worth of period are just coming. I was changing and I didn't even have a normal sanitary towel. It was like industrial size. And I still had to change it like every hour or something. It was crazy. They never tell you. They never. I'm telling you. I'm not saying if you're not a mother and you're watching this, don't let any of this put you off. It's amazing. Don't let it put you off. It is awesome. It is awesome. I'm just explaining to you what you get at the
Oh,
end of it.
you are
So
so
listen to
funny.
all the before this point. That's what you get at the end of it. It is worth it. But if you're new to it and you're going through it, you're like, why the heck am I doing this? This is not worth, it's not worth this much pain. Why am I going through this pain? This is ridiculous. Like, but yeah, that's what I was
Oh,
thinking.
you are a comedian. I love that. If you're watching this and you're not a mum, don't be put off. That's a classic. Oh God. But no, honestly, like at the end it is worth it. You do forget about it afterwards, but it's so funny.
Whilst I was in there, I was thinking to myself, and I think I did actually say to the midwife, I don't understand how people have more than one child. Why would you want to do this again? Why would you want to feel like you're dying again? No.
Oh God. Oh, that's so funny. I am the most squeamish. I've got a really short, the lowest threshold for pain. So I don't actually know how I had 5 babies.
Oh my
It
God.
makes me laugh. I think with age, like you just literally have amnesia after.
You do. You do. You must. You must. Because honestly, I actually felt like, when you have those nightmares that seem to go on forever? I was like, I am in a nightmare. Why won't I wake up? When am I going to wake up? When will I wake up from this nightmare? Oh my God.
So funny, but no, it's real. Yeah, no, it's very intense, and it's amazing how graphic, how different. Like you could be the sweetest, kindest, like, gentle mother. When you go into that room and you feel that pain, you just like snap on people, and everyone's just like looking, go, "What's going on?" Like the Exorcist, you just turn around, give me some drugs.
Yeah, they gave me drugs and I didn't think they were doing anything. But also the other thing, I'm really not trying to put you off. I just want you to make an informed choice. The other thing was, like you're straining so much. They told me, oh, you're gonna poo, and I realized every single time I must have pooed because they had this little thing behind underneath me, and they would change it. every single time that I'd, strained so hard, because, you're just straining in general,
Very
aren't
true.
you?
Yes, very
And
true.
so
That
obviously the
happens.
straining
Yeah.
is just happening at
You're
both
just
ends. And I
pushing
was,
down, exactly. You're bearing down. The good thing, my waters don't break until like they have to actually break them. So you end up emptying your bowels before, because I think I'll pass out. Just I'm so embarrassed, but it happens. It's just natural.
yeah, I thought I'd be embarrassed, and I was
But you're
like,
not. You just
the
lose all of it.
first
So I don't
time,
care.
the first time it happened, that they changed the bedding, that is this sort of plastic bedding that they use in hospitals, and I was like, oh, I must have shat myself.
Yeah,
And then
but
I was like, I don't care. I'm in so much pain. Whatever, they're used to
yeah,
it.
you
It's
just get
only.
over it. You
What
get
about all these other bodily fluids that I've got eking out of me? Come on,
you get
whatever.
yeah, no, it's part of the process. But like you're very right. But sometimes people have princess labors. They go in 5 minutes, one push, baby's out. So hopefully
Wow.
that level, I haven't experienced that, but I've definitely heard about a lot of women.
Some people are just
10
lucky.
minute, 30-minute labors, an hour. So, hopefully that is the case for so many people, and just a safe labor, because it could be
Yeah,
touching
yeah.
hit to some.
But
So
it is called labor for a reason. You are
absolutely,
working, you are
absolutely.
laboring.
You're definitely working. Gosh. The next question I have for you is, how has motherhood changed your perception on yourself, your goals, and life in general?
I changed some of my goals. Some of them just became unimportant. They just weren't important anymore. Um, and actually, I really loved seeing myself as a mother. It's a really important part of who I am. It's not all that I am, but it's a very, very important part of who I am. Um, and I feel very, very blessed. And again, I would say to people who are not mothers, who can't be mothers, who don't want to be mothers, there is nothing wrong with not being a mother. You can have a fulfilling life without being a mother as a woman. I'm not saying that only through being a mother can a woman be happy or feel fulfilled. I'm just saying, for me, that's the difference that it made me have. That's all.
Beautiful. It's a personal choice, like you said.
Yeah.
So the next question is, what did you have to sacrifice in order to become a mum?
Um, I shouldn't have had to sacrifice this, but because we're talking about motherhood, and unfortunately the person who I had the child with is my ex-husband, I have to keep on injecting him into the conversation to try to explain things. But one of the things that I had to sacrifice, such an idiot, this man. He said, oh, before we were going to have a child, he said, I don't feel like I've actually lived. And I know that you didn't mean that question in a literal way, but I want to show you the literal thing that I had to sacrifice. I don't feel like I've actually lived. I haven't done enough living. So before we have a child, I want to just chill for about 6 months. So he actually gave up his job, and I was the one earning and keeping the house and everything. And then he went traveling for 6 months so that he could feel that he lived. And then when he came back, we had a child. Now, if I had any sense at that point, I would be like, F off, and not had a child with him. But at that point, I did not love myself enough. So that's another story altogether. And so, yeah, we had to do that. And then when our child did come, because of what my mother said, I did everything. Um, the other thing that I sacrificed, my pregnancy was absolutely fine. I had excess fluid, so she was very comfortable in there. That's why she was probably overdue. But they saw me on a weekly basis near the end because of the excess fluid, amniotic fluid. And but when she was coming out, her shoulders got stuck. So
Oh,
they actually, I remember 1 minute everything was fine, she was coming out, and then the next minute I sort of saw a look in the midwife's eyes, only one midwife. But another four people came in. My legs were basically ripped apart, and they dislocated my hips. So after I had her, I was in immense pain all the time. In fact, even at one point, I was still in a normal ward. And so to have a bath, I would actually have to go into a bath. And moving my leg to one leg over into the bath would take me about 10 minutes just for one leg because the pain was immense. I literally couldn't walk. And at one point, they had a midwife-led unit, which was really lovely. It was like a hotel compared to the ward, where I had my own room and I had a shower, walk-in shower.
Oh,
So they
yeah.
allowed me to go into that. And that was so nice. It was so lovely. Honestly, it was like a hotel. I had my own ensuite room. And then people would just come in and, it was lovely. But even when I was leaving the hospital, I had to go into a wheelchair to be wheeled to the car because I could not walk. Coming up the stairs, honestly, it was I couldn't even sitting was painful. And I had to go through physio and all sorts. And even now, I still feel that I'm slightly misaligned. They had to do it because they had to get her out. But that was caused through me having her.
Gosh, wow. Yeah, see,
So that was a major sacrifice, my mobility.
some labours, yeah, definitely. Wow, gosh, you've done a great job. That's, yeah, sorry, I'm just so squeamish sometimes. Sorry. I end up seeing things, gosh, you start feeling it. When you talk about labour, it's like, oh my
Well, I
God.
was being very graphic as well. So
But so the next question is, who were you before you became a mum?
before I became a mum, do you know what? I was always the person, and I still am actually, that when somebody brought their baby in to the staff room, or because I was a teacher for years, um, all the other women would be going towards baby and cooing and wanted to touch it. I wasn't interested at all. Like I would just stay wherever I was and not go and look at the baby, not want to touch it, no, nothing. And so before I had my daughter, I was like, oh well, I don't think I'm very maternal. So I thought I'll have some counselling to tell them that I'm not maternal and I don't want to like be a horrible mum and not care about my child. So I had some counselling. But then as soon as I had my daughter, it was just like magical. And I remember I remember the health visitor coming to ask, because they have to check how your mental state. And I said, you don't even have to ask me if I'm all right. I'm the happiest I've ever been in my whole life. There is like nothing. This is like the best present ever. Like, because it was near my birthday as well when I had my daughter. I have like, you don't need to worry about me having mental health issues. I'm fine. Uh, but one thing that one of the things that I used to do, and this was another part of me not liking myself much, was that I didn't allow myself to fully feel emotion. And that's why earlier I was telling you about how I allow myself to feel now. I would stay in this sort of place of limbo where I wasn't too happy and I wasn't too sad. I didn't want to deal with sad things. So I didn't want to deal with any extreme emotions. And so I wouldn't allow myself, if I saw myself, and this is how sad it was, and it was truly, truly sad, if I saw myself getting too excited about something, I would rein it in. I would rein it in and go back to my set point, which was the limbo, the place of limbo. You couldn't imagine it now because I have so much fun, honestly. But that's how I used to be. And obviously I had the counselling and then I had my child. And it, I've never said this before and I've never thought about it before, but I think it's actually true. She unlocked joy. That's what she
Oh,
did. She unlocked that emotion for me. I was so joyful that I couldn't rein it in back into that place, that base point. I couldn't. I was, we spoke about your cup runneth over. My cup ran over with joy. I was so enamored. I was so in love. I was so joyful about having brought this human being into the world that nothing could diminish that joy for me. And
that's
so I had to feel it and I had to experience it. And then when I experienced it, I was like, but this is healthy to experience these things to the point now that I've actually gone the other way where I'm always, well, most of the time joyful. And my daughter has actually said to me, she's very dry, this girl. She said, You're not normal. It's not normal to be this happy all the time. Like, that's not normal. It's like, could you stop it, please? And I said, yeah, but I've got a lot to be happy about.
Teenage years, that's how they are as teens.
She said, to be honest, yeah, it's not normal to be happy all the time. Like, but I am happy most of the time.
You just blame it
Because
on
I'm
her.
just
So you
grateful.
unlocked it. Tell her that what she's done.
I will. I'll tell her today when I pick her up.
I love that. That's beautiful. So leading on, I know you've touched on this, but you might want to answer this one as well. So the question is, what is the gift of motherhood?
Well, all the things I've spoken about, every single one of them, just the pure unadulterated love that you get, but also being able to give love, receiving and giving love. That is the most amazing gift. And then seeing this person grow up, like there are stages of my daughter's life that I miss and I'll never get back. I always say to people who've just had children, enjoy every single moment because they change and you get a new person sometimes every 6 months, sometimes every year, every 2 years. And that person who you had before will never, ever, ever come back. You have lost them forever. And so you have to enjoy every moment you have with them. I remember my daughter through all those stages, and she was always absolutely delightful to the point that when she became a teenager, I didn't actually understand what was going on because I remember she came home one day. Usually she'll come in and give me a hug and a kiss, and she didn't. And I thought, oh, maybe she's in the toilet. So I waited and waited and nothing. I went to the toilet, she wasn't there. And so I went into her room, the lights were off, she was sitting in her bed. And I said, are you all right? She said, yeah, I'm fine. So that happened once. And I thought, oh, that was just, one off. And then it kept on happening. And then I realized, oh, she had turned into that type of teenager. And it's taken me time to come to terms with it because she had always been all happy, smiley, see you, mommy, yes, kids, hug, hug, hug. She was like that or up until the age of about 13.
Yeah, that's when it changes. They go
And I
through.
just couldn't believe it. And I was like, who is this person? And like the joy seemed to sort of seep out of her. And I've started calling her Princess of Darkness now, which she hates. So I say it even more.
You two are terrible.
Just for fun. um, but she but actually she hasn't completely gone because we do have hugs, and when she's not feeling great we have hugs, and we sit on the sofa and watch TV together and talk about what's going the action that's going on, and we can have jokes now, and she's very, very funny. And so that's another new thing that we've got now that we didn't have before, that she can talk to me like an equal, like an adult. She's not an adult, definitely not. But there are certain levels of things that she can talk about now that she couldn't before because she didn't understand them. And she's just so funny. She says things because she has a completely different sort of personality from me. She says things that I would never say. And I'll be like, oh my God, that's so horrible. But it's funny. Um, so I get that. But yes, you just enjoy every single moment because they
Absolutely.
change and change and change and
That's so
change.
true. But I think teenage years, sometimes we underestimate what they go through. There's so much pressure at school. There's so much hormonal changes.
Oh,
And they are a
definitely.
completely different person. And their awareness has shifted. They're starting to see themselves. And I think that shift, I love the way you described it. It's like they go to school and they come back, or they go upstairs and in the morning it's someone totally different.
Yeah.
It's like
There's this what's it called again? Harry Enfield and Friends, that sketch of teenage was he called
is it
Kevin? I can't
Kevin?
remember.
Kevin, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember.
And I
Yeah.
remember seeing that years and years and years ago. And it's just so true.
Yeah,
It is
it is.
absolutely what happens to them. They're
It's
like,
it's a
oh,
lot.
love you, mommy, love you, papa, love you, mama. And then suddenly, whoa.
Yeah. So funny.
You
But
can sort of
they
see, you know, like in those films where you see somebody changing, like
yeah.
um, becoming some sort of monster. You see them sort of transfiguring or whatever. It's like that. You're like, this person.
It's tough on them. It really is. And I think it's, like you said, it's spending those precious moments together because you never get it back. But I think for myself and like speaking to other women and families is understanding like how tough it is for them and how they
Mm,
lock themselves away. So I remember, that every child is different and every child goes through teenage phase differently. But you just see that shift. And as much as sometimes they want to be on their own, they actually want to be around someone. So it's really good to
yeah,
have like activities at that time or getting them socialized. Otherwise, they just lock themselves away and it gets darker and darker and darker. So yeah, no, I love the way you share that. I've got a couple of light-hearted questions. You've done very
yeah,
well. We're approaching the end, don't worry.
yeah.
So the first question I got, just a light-hearted one here. If your daughter was to write a book about you, what would the title be?
Oh, the woman who does too much.
Oh,
Probably
that's a
that.
great title. New York Times bestseller, that sounds
Yeah,
like.
I think so.
Oh, that's
To
brilliant.
her detriment sometimes.
It does too much. Next one is, what's your funniest mum fail moment?
Oh my God. Yeah. I had to think about that and then I remembered it straight away. So I remember it was a hot day. It was actually summer. And I was newly a mummy. And we've gone to the park, and then I packed my daughter into the car, and I think I was going to pack her pushchair into the boot. And she loved playing with the car keys. So I gave her the car keys to play with, and she locked herself in to the car because she just by mistake pressed to lock herself into the car. And first I was trying to get her to press the other button. Obviously, she
Yes.
had no idea. I'm smiling at her. But she's like only a couple of months old. She doesn't even know what I'm on about. She pressed it by mistake because she was just pressing things. Their fingers are, they're not very dexterous. Um, So I literally started panicking, but I didn't want to panic too much because I didn't want her to panic. So I was panicking when I turned away from her to quickly talk to somebody and then go back to her and smiling. And so I saw somebody passing and I said, I've looked, my daughter's locked in the car. What can I do? What can I do? And it was a really, really, really hot day. So she would start sweltering in there soon. And I was trying to think, what can I do? What can I do? Like we could break the glass, could break the glass. Oh God, and then I'll have to pay all this to fix it. Oh my God. Oh. So in the end, what happened? Somebody told me to phone the police.
Oh,
I phoned the police because like it's a baby.
yeah.
They could basically overheat and die. And they said, okay, we can break the glass. Or do you have a spare? I said, I do have a spare. I have a spare in the house and it's right by the door. So what they ended up doing is one of them stayed with her. The other one, the only time I've ever been in a police car, the other one drove me to my house, which is just up the hill. We're very, very close to the sea. We were by the seaside. And basically broke my door open. And then the keys were just there. So I picked up the keys and then went back and unlocked the door.
Oh gosh, that's crazy. God, like the stress at the time. Gosh.
My God, honestly. The thing is also trying to keep, as I said, trying to keep my face all nice and even when I
Yeah,
was looking at her,
not
but
to startle
actually
her.
panicking so much.
Imagine how you must have felt. That would have been a mess. Next question is, what's your go-to hideout place when you needed a break?
It used to it used to be the toilet because that was the only place. No, actually, that's a lie. She would still follow me there. She
They
would
follow
still
you.
follow me there. And whilst I was sitting on the toilet, would come and hug me and say, I
Yeah.
love you, mummy. And I'm like, are you serious? I am trying to. Oh my God. So there was nowhere to hide. Like
Yeah.
she would find me wherever I was. She would just find me. Um,
I love that. And the funny thing is, they'll walk behind you, then close the door behind them and lock it. You're like, you're supposed to be outside.
I'm like, hey, are you
Oh,
here? You're supposed to
oh.
do this on your own. Why are you here?
They're,
Go.
they're looking at you like, why hasn't mum got with the program? Like, this is what we do.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
used to have mine.
It was no big deal. Like it was
They
just
just look at
I
you.
the toilet is not the
No.
end of our connection. When I close the door to the toilet, that doesn't mean anything. And to be honest, I never had a lock to the toilet anyway, so she would just open the door
Oh.
and come in and then be hugging me as I'm sitting on the toilet. And I was thinking to her, this is unhygienic. She didn't understand. She did not
Oh, you're
understand. It
bringing
was
back
not a
so many
problem.
memories. Yeah, they'd all be sitting down in a line around me, and I'm just like, what's going on? And when he goes to
Yeah, more than
you
one.
wouldn't
So
go with him. Oh gosh, so funny. And I remember the one time because I used to like having my bubble baths with cat candles, and I thought I'd escape to have that. And they would come like just under the, the gap under the door and say, Mummy, are you okay in there? Have I done something wrong? And I'm like, no, you've not done anything wrong. I just need to take a bath. Because it was only the few occasions. Even if I had my candles, I normally just leave the doors, then come in and out as they would. But
yeah.
it's just so many beautiful memories you've brought back. So thank you for that. That's so funny. Yeah, the toilet is so funny. Oh gosh. So what's the strangest thing that you've ever found in your daughter's pocket or backpack?
Um, I'm not too sure. I mean, there was one point where she was into making slime.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah.
So found that in all sorts of places. It's usually like stones and sticks. There was
Yeah.
another time because she was into Harry Potter. So she picked up a stick and it was a wand. That was a
Oh.
wand. So that stick was in
Oh gosh.
there.
Yeah,
So
mine like gooey stuff as well and insects.
yeah.
But they thought it was funny because if I was scared of things like this, they would enjoy seeing me jump. So like, yeah,
Oh.
like thank you. Oh, so next question is, if our community of listeners could support you in three transformative ways, what would you like to ask for?
Do you know what? It sort of shows the way that I think. When you said support me, I was like, well, shouldn't it be me supporting them? Um, or them supporting themselves? And do you know what? I would rather answer that question. So I would rather answer the question, how could you support yourself? And these are things that I've learned and, I want to share with people. And we were talking about before we started this that I want to do more coaching because I really think I can help people. But realizing that, especially if you're a Black woman, because we are told that we are unlovable. We're told that we're too much. We're told that we're unattractive and manly. And love on yourself. That love that you have for that partner, that child. If you think that they deserve that love, then so do you. You're worthy. You are just as worthy as they are. So love on yourself as well. I'm not saying don't love on them and love on yourself instead. I'm saying love on yourself as well because you're just as worthy as them to be loved. And this thing about imposter syndrome that people are always talking about, imposter syndrome has its purpose. Could you imagine how big-headed you could be if you started something new and you weren't scared? You weren't scared that you were going to fail or it might not work out the way that you want. Imposter syndrome comes in when you start something new. Think of it this way, that actually it's a really positive thing because it shows you that you are stepping out of your comfort zone and you're trying something new and you're challenging yourself. And because you're challenging yourself, that's why you're scared. And there's nothing wrong with being scared because, you know, anytime we try something new, we're going to be scared because we don't know it. But, you know, like so many other times in your life, there have been times when you started something that you didn't know. And then look at you, you're an expert in it. When you first had a baby, you didn't know what you were doing. Now you're an expert in it. There's always room to grow and learn new things. So it's, if you have that imposter syndrome feeling, that's fine. Don't think, oh, that means that, you know, I shouldn't do this. I'm not good enough. No, it's just normal to be like, oh, I'm scared because this is new. It's normal. It's fine. Feel it, get over it. If you spend too much time thinking about it, after a while, this is what I do to myself anyway. I'm like, you know what? You're in my way. Sit down and get out of my way. I've got things to do. I will allow myself to listen to it for a short while, but it's not going to stop me from doing things. If I want to do it, I want to do it. Anyway, was it, how many things did you say? Two, three, three?
Three,
Three.
please.
Okay. And now I will, because one of the things that I'm practicing is to try to be more selfish. So remember, I changed the answer, the question to how to help the listeners rather than myself. So let me say how to help me. If you feel that what I said resonates with you and you would like me to coach you, then you can contact me through whatever the details are that Sabrina will provide later. Because I'm like this all day, every day. So I might as well get paid for it, and you can enjoy it, not just from this, but from, you know, ongoing.
You're so funny. So I met you at the awards, and it's the first time I'm talking to you. You're absolutely hilarious. Like, I mean,
I think what people find funny about me is I say
yeah, I
things
love it.
that people don't usually just say. And I think also the way that I look, if I wasn't talking, I was just walking around, people just get and they have a perception of who they think I am. And I think what's funny about me is that I sound completely different from what I look like I might be like, if that makes sense. And I literally don't really have much of a filter. I would just say stuff. Like I have no shame. Like,
No, it's good stuff. It's funny. Well, the next question is, I was going to backtrack, but I'm glad that you've added one. So I want to be respectful that you wanted to do it that way. So I was thinking, I want her to ask free, but I think that you at least you inserted yourself because it really is about you. So that's really.
yeah.
The next question I have is, what's one way that you plan on paying it forward as a result of our conversation today?
Well, as I said, doing some coaching. But also, I think I spend all of my life paying it forward, to be honest, if I'm completely honest. Like anytime I do anything, it's for the good of other people. And that's why I said I had to actually try to inject more time into doing things for myself. I pay it forward constantly. When good things happen to me, I want to share them with people. So, for example, as mayor, you're supposed to have a consort who goes with you to all of the wonderful events that you go to. And ordinarily, people are married or they have a friend and one friend who they go with all the time. I decided to do it differently. I wanted other people to share in this with me, especially people of Folkestone. So I actually invited different people each time. And all the other mayors would be like, oh, we know you, you're always bringing somebody new. And anytime, like, they didn't eventually they asked me. For a long time they made the assumption, like so many people do, that I was married and I was married to a man. And then eventually they said to me, Abena, because they'd never seen this person I was married to, Abena, are you married? Do you have a partner? I said, no. I was married at some point, but I'm divorced, but I'm also gay. So it wouldn't be a man if you ever saw me with. But if you do see me with women, none of them are my girlfriends, okay? Could you please understand that? None of them are my girlfriends, because I thought they would get a bit confused. They'll think, oh, anytime they saw me with a woman, they'd be like, is that her girlfriend? Is that her girlfriend? But none of them were.
So funny. So the next question is, how do you hope sharing your story on this podcast will impact our listeners and viewers?
Well, I hope they'll understand the joy of being a mother, that if they are in a relationship which is not serving them in all number of ways, it could be the extreme domestic abuse, or it could be just that their values don't align with the person who they're with, to understand that you can still thrive outside of a relationship. And if you want to be single as well, you can still thrive as a single person. And I hope, they hear that there's a lot of joy in everyday life as well. Like, just, I wake up in the morning and I actually just say, God, thank you that I'm alive. And just to be alive, that is enough. The sun is shining. I'm going to pick up my daughter in a minute. Just being alive is a gift. And I hope you heard that in the way that I spoke and the things that I said. There is so much joy in being alive and being able to. And you know what? Actually, I was going to say being able to. You don't even have to do anything. Just being alive.
Very
You don't
true.
need to do anything. You don't need to do anything to be of value or to justify your existence. Just being here is enough.
Exactly. What are you proud of yourself for?
Learning to love myself. I'm proud of that. I'm really, really proud. I've spent 2 years as a civic dignitary and going out and about. I say to the other mayors, I am Chief Enjoyment Officer. That is my official title. Not really. But I have really taken joy, eked as much joy as I can from every single day. And I've also learned to love what I do, congratulate myself when I achieve things, and really honor myself as a human being. Give the love that I give to other people to myself. That's what I've done.
That's lovely. Next question is, what do you want to say sorry to yourself for?
For not loving myself.
Just straight to it.
Yeah.
In following that question, what do you want to forgive yourself for? So although
Not loving
sorry,
myself.
you want to forgive for the same thing. Okay. What do you want to say thank you to yourself for?
Loving myself.
Oh, I like that. And the final question is, what are you willing to let go of and heal from as a result of today's conversation?
I need to work on it, but it's something that keeps on coming up. I need to let go of feeling that I'm not being truly authentic and doing my life's work if I'm being paid for it.
Excellent. Excellent. I want to thank you. You've patiently waded through all the questions and answered so openly. I really want to thank you for that, Abena. Like, you've been
Thank you for asking them.
really, really been amazing. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. You've made
I
me
have.
feel all the emotions, all the emotions. So thank you very much for taking some time out of your busy schedule. So I'm just going to do an outro now, and we will close there. So, listeners, let's turn words into action. If you're moved by today's story, and think about how you can offer some support, no matter how big or small, whether it's a message of kindness, a shared resource, or connecting with our guests. Let's build a community that uplifts and empowers each other. Thank you for tuning in to the Unheard Cries of a Mother. Your stories matter, and together we can create ripple effects of understanding, support, and transformation. If today's conversation resonated with you, Please like, comment, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, as mothers, we are stronger together. Until next time, let's keep uplifting each other and turning unheard cries into powerful voices. Abena, thank you so, so much. It's been amazing getting to know you, and have a wonderful day.
You too.